What's up guys, the Skull Seeker here. So today I'm going to do part 3 of my collection, and this will be the cartilaginous fish, so essentially the shark jaws and my one pair of skate jaws. So here we have all of them, and we're going to essentially be looking at the teeth to kind of compare how all the sharks, like how they all look together. So basically just comparing the teeth of the sharks. Okay, so first we have the scalloped hammerhead shark, and I have two of these jaws here. So we'll do a zoom in, and here we are with these teeth. So the thing you'll notice with kind of all shark jaws, the very middle of the jaws have differently shaped teeth. So like here you can see there's like this little smaller one, and then there's these other ones that are a little bit smaller. Then the other ones are different shapes. So yeah, you can see that one in the very middle is a totally different shape than the other teeth. If you look at the top, you can see also that it's a different shape and smaller, and they kind of crowd together on the top and the bottom where the jaws meet. So again, we can look at these ones and see that, and then the bottom ones and see that. It'll be more obvious with some of the others. But anyway, so with these teeth, you can see they're kind of pointed towards one side. So they all point backwards towards the back of the mouth and towards the side. So all the teeth along the jaw point back. That way, when it bites down on something, it is pulled into the mouth of the shark. And often you'll also notice in some of these species that the top jaws and the bottom jaws look different. However, with this one, the scalloped hammerhead, they're about the same. So next, here we have the black spot shark. We have two of these also. With this one, you can see the top jaw has some similarities to the scalloped hammerhead, other than there are more obvious serrations. Like the serrations are easier to see on here, and there's a little point going back that is slightly different than the scalloped hammerhead. So it's essentially kind of two teeth, has a little one behind the first one, the bigger one, so it's kind of interesting. The bottom jaw, you'll notice, are very different than the top jaw. They're little spikes that stick straight upward. So it's just a little prong, essentially, poking upwards. So when the bottom jaw bites into something, it essentially holds that fish or whatever it's biting in place and then pulls it against the top jaw, which this one would cut it apart. So the top jaw cuts and this one kind of just grips. So it's pretty effective. But yeah, you can see totally different shape from the bottom versus the top. Honestly, the top ones kind of look like tiger shark teeth a tiny bit, but they don't curve enough. They still point downwards. Then our other one here, you can see very similar since it's the same species. Then we have the silky shark. So I have two of these as well. So the silky shark, you can see once again the teeth on the top and bottom are quite different. So on the top we have these kind of downward pointing serrated teeth. The top edges are much more serrated and thicker than the point. So there's fine serrations on the point and thicker, larger ones that are more obvious towards the top where it attaches to the jaw. The center has slightly thinner teeth. Then the bottom jaw, we have a bunch of, once again, similar to the other one, pronged ones that stick straight up. Now these ones do not have serrations, at least not very easy to see. They are still there. However, they are very minimal, so very hard to see the serrations on these lower teeth. And then yeah, the other one down here, the other silky shark, once again you can see the tooth structure on those. Okay, next we have the big nose shark, which this is a much larger jaw set. This one is probably around 11 inches wide. This one, once again, is different from top and bottom. So you'll notice that on the top, if it will let me zoom in. Oh, come on. I hate my phone zoom buttons, they suck. Okay, this one you can see fine serrations all the way along the tooth. So very sharp, very deadly. Would not want to get bit by one of these. This would just rip you to pieces with all the serrations. The top ones look a lot like great white shark tooth structure, other than they're not perfect kind of triangles. They still curve the tiniest bit. So not quite like a great white shark, but overall similar structure. You'll notice that little one in the middle, this kind of curved inwards. Then the bottom jaw, once again, these teeth are thicker than the other ones' prongs, but once again, they stick straight up and they're not very serrated. They still have the tiniest little bit, but not anywhere near as defined as the other ones. They're very minuscule and almost invisible in that cute little triangle one there in the center. But yeah, these teeth once again stick straight up, but you can still kind of see those serrations. However, it is not quite the same as these much larger serrations on the top. Okay, then we have the coral cat shark jaws. So I have 4 of these, and these ones are kind of hard to see because they're so small, but they just essentially have these super tiny little teeth. You can see the ones on the bottom are super tiny and spiked. The ones on the top are smaller and really hard to see, but let me see if I can zoom a bit more and still have it in focus. And that's decent, other than I'm shaky. But anyway, they're super tiny little teeth. Then we have the other 2. There you go. Little tiny teeth on these. So obviously these are going to be not very efficient for hurting a human. Then we have the spot tail shark. And so this one, let's get the ×2. This one has serrated teeth that are a lot like tiger shark teeth. However, you'll notice that they curve kind of weirdly. They curve first down and then kind of outward. So it's like it curves like down and then kind of curves around. So it's really hard to see, but like really weirdly, I don't know. But anyway, the teeth are very weirdly shaped on this. Doesn't want to focus very well. The bottom jaw has these pronged ones. However, these ones point slightly back. But I hope you're noticing a pattern that the lower jaw typically has more straight pointing upward teeth and much thinner than what you'd find on the top, which are more heavily serrated. So then next we have the blue shark, and this one has some very good serrations on these teeth. You can see just how defined those are. Very sharp serrations, very obvious. These are very distinct teeth just by how easily it is to see, like how easily you can see the serrations. Very easy to see those. So very sharp, very dangerous. And then as we move down, we see they get smaller, and some of these are actually deformed. It's kind of interesting because that's not broken, it just is deformed. The lower jaws now, these look more like mako shark teeth, very elongated and pointy upwards. However, you can still see those serrations really well. So that's really interesting. And you'll notice that the center of the jaw here has kind of a bundle of teeth all together really interestingly. That's pretty cool to look at, how they just kind of all meet up there in that spot. But yeah, I think this would be a good one to compare the backside. So if we take this off, we can look at the backside of the jaws. So here you can see that they are essentially rows and rows. Remember, sharks usually have 5 or more rows of teeth in their mouth. So they just kind of fold back into these extra rows. And then as the tooth falls out, they move forward and into that spot. So here's a side view. You can see all those extra teeth in there. From the bottom jaw, once again, you can see all those teeth. So essentially just tons and tons of extra rows. So it's pretty cool to see all of that. But yeah. Okay. Next, we have the gray smoothhound shark jaws. I have 3 of these. And so these ones, you'll notice, these teeth are extremely flat and they're not capable of really tearing anything. These are more for crushing and gripping. So these are kind of diamond-shaped teeth. They'd be more what you'd expect to find in a whale shark, but not quite. They're still different. But these kind of form like little rows of essentially like scales. Like this is kind of what you'd see on a shark's body. Instead of like these being teeth, picture them like scales because they're that packed closely together. There's no gaps. And these are kind of just like maybe snake scales would be a good way to look at it in terms of pattern wise, like a rattlesnake scale. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, essentially that's what shark skin is made of. It's little teeth called denticles that look just like that, other than slightly differently shaped, depending on the species. But anyway, it's pretty cool. And then yeah, we have the other ones. You can see all these guys have those very interesting kind of diamond-shaped teeth that are flat. So like I say, those would not cut you open like at all. Then next we have the black tip shark, which is different than the black tip reef shark. So here's the teeth on this guy. These ones are a lot like you'd see on the bottom jaws of most of those other species I showed you. They're relatively straight and just pointed downwards. And the teeth on the bottom jaw are pretty similar. However, they're more like even, like pointing to the center. They're like the point is essentially centered, whereas the top ones are curved slightly. So that's an interesting difference between the top and bottom teeth. But yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with this one is how the top and bottom are both very similar in shape, whereas a lot of the others we've looked at are totally different. So pretty interesting here. Once again, there's those little extra rows in there. That's pretty cool. Okay, then our biggest jaws, we have the spinner shark. These are, if I remember correctly, 13 inches. Might be bigger than that, but either way, they're definitely over a foot wide. By far my largest, they weigh, I think, 5 pounds. They're kind of a lot. Anyway, so the spinner shark, we can see these teeth are kind of curved slightly and they curve inward. So instead of just pointing like down, they also kind of curve back into the mouth. So these ones, if you look at the side view, you can see that they curve straight back into the mouth. So anything that is bit is essentially stuck going into the mouth. It can't get back out. But yeah, that's a really cool feature of this guy. You can see all the teeth kind of joined together in the middle there. And then the bottom jaw, once again, kind of from this view, this is straight on. You can see, you can't even really see the tips of the teeth. And like I say, that's because they're pointed into the mouth. So when this is swallowing something, it essentially can't make its way back out. And this one, you'll notice, once again, the top and bottom teeth are very similar. However, there are slight differences, but just barely. But, and actually you can notice this tooth here is actually broken. It's split down the middle, which is kind of interesting. And you'll notice these ones, once again, are a different shape because they're clustered in the middle. Then we can look at the inside. So there it is. There's all those rows. A lot of teeth. But yeah, So this guy, a thing you'll notice, look how tiny the teeth are compared to the size of the jaw. Whereas if we look at the big nose, these teeth are a lot larger compared to the size of the jaw. So when you think about how megalodon size is estimated based on teeth, it is inaccurate. And I mean, I know there's newer studies, like extremely new, but essentially, if you look at this and you're picturing like, oh, well, imagine each one of these is a megalodon tooth and this is the jaw of a megalodon. You could say, oh, well, maybe this is like, well, this is a bad example. We'll look at this. Okay, so imagine this is megalodon. These are the jaws, and then these teeth are megalodon's teeth. So you would say, oh, well, maybe this shark is 60 feet long. But these teeth are big compared to the jaw. You go over here at this one where these teeth are small and it's a bigger jaw. Now you would say if these were the same size teeth, but you put them into this jaw, that essentially like the jaw would be much bigger in order to fit all of those same size teeth to equal this amount of teeth. So if you're kind of understanding what I'm saying, if the megalodon had smaller teeth proportionate to its jaw size, like this shark, megalodon could be well over 100 feet long, whereas if its teeth were like this shark, it would be only around 60 feet long. So we don't know exactly how big the jaws were because we just have teeth and vertebrae of megalodon, but essentially, if the teeth were tiny compared to the jaw, it could be a lot larger. Whereas if this was the same jaw and the teeth were bigger, then obviously it's going to be a smaller shark because it's not going to fit this type of shark. It's going to fit that type of shark's body plan as opposed to this. But we already know that megalodon was nothing like great whites in terms of body structure, and now they've been comparing it to slimmer sharks. So that's an interesting thing. But anyway, just note about megalodon is realistically this could be its jaws for all we know, other different tooth shape, meaning megalodon could easily be over 100 feet long. But that will likely never be proven, so we just have our own theories as time goes on. Okay, so next we have the big eye thresher shark. So, these guys are cool. They have the little whip tail. I guess not a little whip tail, but a long whip tail that they smack fish schools with. So that's a pretty interesting feature that sets this shark apart. Obviously, I mean, the hammerhead is different because that T-shaped head, hammerhead. Anyway, so the big eye thresher shark, we can zoom in on that. These teeth serrated the tiniest bit, and these are essentially daggers that point to the outside of the mouth. So when that bites down on something, it's essentially poking it and not letting it out. So once again, with these bottom teeth, we have these ones that point up, but you'll notice again that they curve backwards slightly. Not too much, but just the tiniest bit. You can see better on this side. They kind of curve back a little bit. And like I say, the top ones are more pointed and triangular. I don't know how you describe the shape. Arrow shaped, I guess. Like if we have the front of the arrow pointing that way, and then the little, or like a computer mouse, I guess you can kind of see that where it goes like this. But yeah. Anyway, kind of shaped like that computer cursor. Okay, so then we have the spiny dogfish. So the spiny dogfish is obviously a lot smaller than these others. Like if we look at this, there it is, very small. This one is just barely an inch across. You can see with these guys, super tiny teeth that curve kind of to the side. You can see the bottom jaws. The bottom jaws teeth are more defined, just barely, easier to see. But anyway, essentially just the tiniest little spikes sticking upwards and curving to the side. So that would still be efficient if it were to like kind of turn, like do a death roll or something, rip out a chunk, kind of like a cookie cutter shark, or if they bit down something and shook their head. But really, it's nowhere near as potent as the jaws of a great white, just due to that structure. But yeah, like I say, tiny little guy. You can see my finger compared to it. So yeah. Okay, then we have the dusky shark. So the dusky shark is once again another one of those that you would kind of typically think of picturing megalodon compared to in terms of like jaw structure, because it has very large teeth for its jaw size. So this is once again kind of a stereotypical megalodon looking shark in terms of jaw structure. However, you'll notice that the bottom teeth are nothing like megalodon's bottom teeth. But anyway, top teeth are extremely great white shark looking. Like, these are actually almost identical to a great white shark's tooth. They are triangles that point straight downwards, and you'll see a lot of these are actually damaged, which is kind of crazy. Like almost all of these up here are damaged to some extent. So the shark would have been likely to replace a lot of these if it were still alive. But anyway, yeah, you look at these teeth and you just see all of the ones here are just pointing essentially straight down. So when you look at some of these, you'll see that is typical great white shark tooth right there. The serrations are actually a bit larger though, proportionate to their size than great white shark serrations, which is interesting. But yeah, so then the bottom jaw, we have once again these kind of pointy pronged ones. However, these are longer proportionately than some of the other species we looked at. So it has a lot longer teeth, still serrated. You can see with this one here, if it will focus, it still has serrations on it. So yeah, you can look in here, see the extra teeth. So yeah, pretty cool. Then you'll notice this super tiny little baby tooth that looks kind of weird up there. Okay, and then our last one on the wall, we have the short fin mako. So this one is my tallest set of jaws, and one of the largest. The thing that sets the mako shark apart is the shape of its teeth. Also the fact that they kind of curve outward. So if we look at the jaws from the side, you'll see, especially on the bottom jaw, that they point straight forward. So instead of being pointed back into their mouth, they have a lot of teeth that point outward, like just totally outside of their mouth. And I typically think of makos as being cute, but a lot of people think they're ugly or creepy because their teeth look so weird. Same thing with sand tigers. Their teeth are very weirdly shaped. Well, I guess not just the teeth, but like the structure of the jaw. But you'll notice here, there actually isn't any teeth in the middle of the jaw. They're perfectly separate down the side. So like we have a split right here, tooth, nothing in the middle. Like all these other sharks that have teeth in the middle, the mako shark does not have that. So zoom in on these, and we can see these teeth have very slight serrations, but close to none. Like they're very smooth edges, but you can still see there's a tiny bit of serration, just barely. These ones are kind of curved. You can see they're not pointing straight downward. They're not pointing straight to the side. They go a little bit downwards and then curve to the side. So it's a very unique tooth shape for the mako. And obviously they have these other ones that are slightly differently shaped. On the sides of the mouth, they're more straight as opposed to the ones in the very front, those four. And of course they have the big four, smaller ones, and they gradually get a bit larger and then they get smaller again. Whereas we look at the bottom jaw, you'll see all of these ones. Once again, no teeth in the middle of the mouth. Totally sets them apart from other sharks. And they have these big rows, like if you can imagine like helicoprion, essentially, this big whirl that curls forward. So that's the crazy thing with them. And once again, looking at the side view, it's literally just like a spike wheel that kind of curves outward. There's obviously no teeth on the backside like the bottom, but still you can see it's essentially wraps all the way around. It even curves into the inside with those teeth. So they have at least 5 of those that curve out to the outside, like a half wheel of thorns, which is really cool. So very unique feature of the mako is its teeth. So pretty awesome looking teeth, pretty awesome looking jaws. And like I say, the amazing thing is that the center on both the bottom and the top jaw is toothless, whereas these guys, tooth in the middle, teeth in the middle, teeth in the middle, teeth in the middle. All of the others have teeth in the middle. The mako is just bare and bare. But yeah, the top and bottom teeth are very similar in the mako. However, the mako has more of the elongated pronged ones on the bottom jaw than it does on the top jaw, because the top jaw just has those 4 rows. But down here we have like tons. There's at least 6 rows here on the bottom, and then it has these other teeth that are more spiky. But yeah, it's essentially a very spiky toothed shark. Like, you can imagine just getting bit on this, and that would not be pleasant. That's actually extremely sharp. Just touching that, just barely, feels like it poked a hole in my finger. That is sharp. So, very pokey shark. And that is our short fin mako. And I'm sure that you guys were wanting to see that fish closer since I showed it in the beginning of the video. So here we have my walleye. It is 27 inches long. Pretty good condition. Like, it's really good actually. Big teeth, serrated edges of the jaw right here, nice eye, and then all the fins. So yeah, it's pretty nice. And then the gill rakers, and yeah, it's a real mount, not a replica. But yeah. Okay, now we will take a look at my white tip reef shark jaws and the skate jaws. Okay, so first we have the white tip reef shark jaws. These are obviously very tiny. They are only 3 inches across. So it's a lot harder to see the features than you would be able to in a much larger individual. However, we can still kind of see these. These teeth are interesting because they're actually have 3 points. So there's a lot of extinct sharks that kind of have this dentition. It doesn't want to focus though. But yeah, you can see, let me zoom in a lot more. Okay. Oop, intersected the blanket. You will see that, yeah, these teeth have essentially 3 points. You can see every single tooth has 1 point in the middle and then 2 smaller ones on each side. So that's a very interesting feature of the white tip reef shark. And then the bottom is also very similar, where these teeth also have these 3 pointed teeth. And you'll notice the ones on the bottom are a tiny bit longer with the middle point than on the top jaw, but just barely. But yeah, so all those teeth are just super tiny 3-pointed teeth. And look at the back side, you can see, I guess I gotta tilt it a lot more to see that, but anyway, you can see all those little teeth in there curving into their rows backwards. So a lot of little teeth. Because I mean, even imagine this one with, like, if this was Megalodon's jaw, imagine that if its teeth were the same size as they are now, but the jaw was big enough to support that many. That's crazy. Like, that would be a 200-foot Megalodon. That's the kind of crazy thing about Megalodon size estimation, is there's just, you can't do it right. But anyway, put the white tip reef shark jaws aside. Here we have the cuphead skate. So these ones, obviously this is a skate, which is related to rays more than sharks. But skates they essentially look a lot like rays. However, they don't have the venomous barbs, at least usually. I'm not entirely sure if there's any species with them, but I know typically they don't. Anyway, so this guy, you can see its jaws are kind of in a chomping motion already. Instead of being more open wide, they're pointed forward. But if we zoom in on these guys, these little teeth here, little chompers, they essentially, man, it does not like focusing on these little ones. Let me zoom in more. Okay. These little ones, you can see that these teeth are relatively straight. There's only 1 point as far as I can tell. And they are like kind of pointed to the sides. but it's a lot different than the other shark jaws we've been looking at, because yeah, these ones aren't serrated, at least not noticeably, and the teeth are pointing to the back. There's no extra prongs. There's nothing, like no extra points. The bottom jaw is a lot different. Look at these teeth. These ones on the sides look a lot more like the scales found in the gray smoothhound shark jaws. The ones in the middle are more pokey, really weirdly shaped. You'll just notice that these are just very weirdly shaped jaws. There's also a lot more rows in here than in the sharks, at least in the middle. So very unique, but you'll just see all the kind of differences there. You can also see all these tiny teeth by my thumb, super tiny little teeth in there that are much smaller and less formed than the ones that are much larger, the obvious ones. But yeah, actually, it doesn't even really have those on the other side. It's just on that side that has all those extra teeth. That's interesting. Huh. Wow. And then, like I said, the top jaw, you can see they kind of form a pad together, but still not quite like the other sharks or like this gray smoothhound. This one still has distinct teeth. But yeah, despite looking pretty similar, they are still different, and different than all the sharks that we've looked at, especially. But yeah, that's a cool feature of these guys. But yeah, the bottom teeth especially very wild and not very tamed looking, just like very spread out, very what's the word? I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, so there we have our, doesn't want to zoom out, our cuphead skate. These jaws, if I remember correctly, are about 2.5 inches wide. So these are my second smallest jaws after the spiny dogfish jaws. And then my next smallest are, well, actually, no, these are bigger than my coral cat sharks. So yeah, it would go the spiny dogfish, coral cat shark, cuphead skate, and then the smoothhound shark, and then the white tippery shark, and then the spot tail shark, and then like all the others. But the largest by far is the spinner shark. So anyway, we got all these cool little jaws. So yeah, that is it for part 3 of the video. The next part of the video will be the reptiles and birds and amphibians. So that will be all lumped together, since I don't have very many amphibians, and since birds, I don't have very many of them either, but technically they're also reptiles. So I'm just going to lump all 3 of those groups together to make a longer video. Probably will be longer than an hour, should be longer than the fish video. So at least an hour and a half, I'm sure. It might be longer, I don't know, it depends on how much I need to talk about each skull. But I think I have more of those skulls than I do the fish. I had 21 fish skulls shown in part 2, and I think I have more reptile, bird, and amphibian skulls than that, so it will be a lot longer to talk about all of those. But anyway, I'll make sure to go through those, and then potentially make a new part of my collection video, essentially redoing the mammals with all the new ones I've gotten, because I have a whole lot more. I've gotten a lot more than I did when I made the first video. So got a whole lot of other content, other skulls I need to make content with. But yeah, so that is I think the plan for the next few videos, as well as releasing a skull whitening video just as a YouTube short, and then doing something with my bear skull. But yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.